Hello everybody, we're back up at our Wisconsin hunting property, and it's time to do some more work on the 1977 Gravely Model 812 garden tractor. I did a video a while back, and I'll link it in the description of how to remove, service, and replace the mower deck on one of these machines. And in the process of doing that video, I noticed that the belt that was on this deck was in horrible condition, was deeply cracked, was in serious need of being replaced. So I went ahead and ordered a replacement. It finally came in the mail. Now it's time to do a video on how to replace the belt on one of these decks. The deck that's on my particular tractor is the 50-inch deck. These also came with, I believe, a 40-inch deck. Some of them, I guess, came with larger decks. The premise is going to be the same here. But this is an 800 series tractor. These also came on the 8000 series and the G series. So just consult your owner's manual for any slight variations that you may see. For the 50-inch deck, you're going to need a 1/2 by 126-inch V-belt. For this application, I chose the Gates High Power 2, belt number A124, and yes, the A124 belt is 126 inches long. Once you've taken your mower deck off of your tractor, and again, if you don't know how to do that, I've linked a video in the description to show you how to remove and replace your mower deck. The first thing you're going to need to do is take the carriage off the top of the deck. Now the carriage is held on with 4 nuts and bolts. There's going to be 2 in the front, which is on the right hand side of your screen. Those 2 bolts are on either side of the gearbox. And there's going to be 2 on the back of the carriage on the left hand side of your screen, right behind the 2 pivots. You're going to need a 3/4 inch socket to remove the lock nuts that hold the carriage onto the mower deck. Now these are supposed to be held on with carriage bolts, which means you should just be able to slide your hand under the mower deck and hold the head of the bolt up against the deck shell to keep it from spinning as you take the lock nut off. But at some point in time, the carriage bolts on this deck got replaced with regular bolts, so I just had to use a 3/4 inch wrench to keep the bolt from spinning. It's important to note that the carriage is held up off of the mower deck by tube steel spacers on 3 of the 4 bolts, and the 4th bolt, the rear one on the right hand side, actually goes through the pivot for the tension pulley. So just keep your hardware in order because you're going to have to reinstall it the same way it came out. When you take your carriage off, you're going to notice that there is a drive pulley on the other side of this gearbox. That pulley stays with the carriage, the rest of the pulleys stay with the mower deck. The next thing you're going to need to do is to remove the belt guards that are on either side of the carriage. Those are going to be held on with 4 Phillips head machine screws. And once you take those off, it's not a bad idea to just go ahead and give everything a real good thorough cleaning. There should be a decal on your mower deck showing you the belt routing diagram. If there's not, go ahead and take a screenshot of this one. At the bottom of the decal, you see it says tighten spring to 15 thousandths of an inch air gap. We'll go over that in a little bit when we discuss how to adjust the tensioner. All of these pulleys are on the deck itself except the one at the very top of the decal. That is the pulley that's opposite the gearbox on your carriage. If for some reason you need to figure out belt routing on your own, it's usually not difficult on a deck like this. You're going to have 2 different types of pulleys. You're going to have V pulleys like this where the inside of the belt goes. You're going to have flat pulleys like this where the outside of the belt goes. So if you have the properly sized belt, it's usually not difficult if you take a minute or 2 to figure out how this belt goes on. This is where you adjust the tension on one of these Gravely mower decks. To loosen the tension, you'll run the lock nuts all the way out to the right. To tighten them, you'll run them back into the left. When you install your belt and you have your carriage back in place, you will tighten the tension on this until you have a 15 thousandths of an inch gap between the coils on the tension spring. Now take a pair of 9/16 inch wrenches and loosen up the lock nuts on the threaded rod on your tensioner all the way to the end. If you don't do this, you will probably not be able to get the carriage back on the deck once you install your new belt. Once the tensioner is sufficiently loosened, you can go ahead and route your new belt. Now, if I'm replacing a belt that isn't broken, I always wait until the very last second to take that old belt off. I guess this just comes from years of replacing belts on decks where, that decal with the routing diagram was missing. It's just easier if I wait until the last second to take the old belt off, then I don't run the risk of forgetting how to put the new one on. And a word of caution: when you install a belt on one of these decks, make sure the V belt goes between the tension pulley and the pivot for that pulley. It looks like I've got it on the wrong side here, which I actually do. I'm going to correct that when I go to put the carriage on, but if you have it on the wrong side of that pivot, you could probably get the carriage on. You can probably apply tension to that pulley, but as soon as you engage the PTO, you're going to absolutely destroy that belt. Now go ahead and take your carriage and place it on top of the mower deck, placing the V-belt into the groove of the drive belt under the carriage. Once you finish reinstalling your carriage and you have all 4 nuts and bolts tightened down, it's time to go ahead and set the tension on your belt. How you do this is you take a 9/16" wrench and you tighten the inboard lock nut, that's the nut closest to the spring, until you have a 15/1000 of an inch air gap between the coils of that spring. Now, if you don't have a feeler gauge, just use a business card. It'll get you close enough. Once you have that air gap on that spring set, you'll take a second 9/16 wrench and you're going to take the outboard nut and you're going to tighten it up until it's right up against the inboard nut. Take a pair of wrenches, tighten them together. That'll lock them into place. Once you finish adjusting your belt tension and taking one last look just to make sure that everything's routed correctly, it's time to go ahead and reinstall your belt guards. I usually just shoot a little bit of penetrating oil into the threaded holes on the deck just to make sure that the next time I need to take these screws out, they're going to come out okay for me. Once that's done, it's time to reinstall the deck onto your tractor. Once the mower deck's reinstalled on the tractor, it's time to fire it up, make sure everything's working properly, and then go cut some grass. As you can see, changing the deck belt on one of these Gravely garden tractors is a pretty simple process that you can do yourself and save a little bit of time and money. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you on another episode.